Finding balance. That's what I want to talk about in this episode. I think many of us are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, pretty stressed out by the chaos happening all around us and all over our country. It's easy to get into a habit of doom scrolling and refreshing the news all day long, but I think we can't sustain that. So I want to give you some tips for managing this and finding a healthier balance. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Life. I will share a few links in this episode. They are going to be in the newsletter version. If you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, this is finding balance while fighting the good fight. And I think I decided I needed to do this episode because personally, I'm not doing very well. I've gotten into a pretty bad habit of living on the news sites all day long and scrolling through social media and Substack and refreshing just to see what's happening, because it is pretty stressful as an American, everything that's happened in just a few months this year. So every day I do that, I read about some new horrific event that has happened in the news, and it stresses me out, and sometimes it ruins my entire day, and that makes it hard to live life. I'm having difficulty focusing on my work. I'm finding it hard to relax because instead of relaxing, I'm reading the news and I'm refreshing to see the latest updates. I'm not sleeping well at night. It's not very sustainable. And I was thinking about this, not to compare ourselves to soldiers in combat, but even soldiers on the front lines get a break. They don't go to the front lines and fight 24/7 because they would break down. It's impossible to do that. And even though we are not fighting on the front lines of war, we are fighting and dealing with an information war and with things that are happening to friends and loved ones and changes to laws that were meant to protect us and give us rights that we hold near and dear to our hearts. And it's kind of scary. It's nerve-wracking. And we can't keep doing it day in and day out. We will burn out. We will not be healthy as a result of dealing with that and the stress and the impact that has on your body. So we have to find ways to decompress and detach occasionally. And I would say my wife is managing this better than I am. We talk about it a lot. She doesn't steep in it like I do. She's not constantly scrolling the news and writing articles about it and post on Substack about it. So she's a bit worried. She's worried about my emotional health and has been giving me some suggestions for dealing with it and managing it and finding some balance in my life. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm adjusting things in my daily schedule and habits, and I'm trying to find a better balance. So I want to share some of the things that I've been trying and some things that I'm getting ready to do, because I'm not doing enough. Trying to have that healthier relationship, that balance of staying informed and taking action, but taking care of yourself too, right? So there are 10 different things I wanted to share. It's 10 ways to pace yourself. And I think of it like this. It is a marathon that we're dealing with. This isn't a sprint. We have more years of this that we have to get through. So if we try to maintain the pace that we've already set in the first couple of months, that's not going to sustain itself. We can't last 4 years or even more. I hope not. But we got to pace ourselves. We have to treat this like a marathon and be in it for the long haul. So a few things, and I've talked about some of these before. These are things I've done even to deal with the stress of life and running a business and trying to find balance with all of that and be healthier, because there was a long time in my life that I wasn't. In my corporate career, I was working really long hours and nights and weekends, and I wasn't taking vacations, and that wasn't sustainable. I was burning out, and I was paying the price for that with my health. So some of these I've already been doing because of that to regain my life. And some of them I think apply to what we're dealing with right now. So number one is kind of number one because it's the first part of your day, and it's beginning your day with more peaceful mornings. And I know this is hard. We all have a smartphone on our nightstand and in our pocket, and it is so tempting to unlock that thing first thing in the morning and check everything, right? That's what most of us do. It's what many people do. I've stopped doing that. I stopped doing that a while ago because it was a pretty stressful way to start my day. Even if it wasn't the news and it wasn't what's happening now, it was messages from clients and other things going on that I had to deal with, and it's not a good way to start the day. So my first tip for you is to begin your day with a more peaceful morning. So that means do your best to not touch your phone until you've kind of started your day. You have your coffee or tea or whatever it is you have in the morning. I like to start the day with some journaling. I talk about that a lot. It helps me focus. And I use a paper journal, and I've created a paper journal. You've probably seen me promote that because I couldn't find anything that worked the way I liked. So I finally said, hey, if you can't find it, make it. And so I made a journal that works the way I want. It's just a one page that I fill out every morning. And I do that on paper for a reason. So I don't have a laptop. I don't have a phone or an iPad that has notifications flashing and beeps and buzzes telling me, check your messages, check the news. There's a notification on LinkedIn, all that stuff that pulls you out of that relaxing morning. And it's good to do this to focus yourself. So before you're interrupted, before something distracts you, before something tries to steal the prioritization of your day, you decide. You decide what are the most important things you want to do every day. What do you want to focus on? And then just free form journaling. So it's like there is no right answer for this. I often just write creative stuff. I'll write down ideas I have for articles or short stories. I write fiction. Things I want to do, things I want to improve in my life. Like, I want to start running now that the weather's slowly getting nicer. Or I want to make sure to call my mom this weekend. I forgot to call her. Little things. So I'm just journaling free form. I sketch. I draw diagrams, or I'll sketch an image or whatever it is, right? So I create some art too. And it's a really good way to kind of center myself. I enjoy my coffee. It's peaceful. It's quiet. I'm just writing in the notebook. It takes about, 20, 30 minutes at the most that I do this. And then and only then will I pick up my phone and I check my calendar and figure out what I got to do that day. I might check the weather if I'm going to be going out. And then I check messages and see if my clients need anything or if there's something I have to deal with. And then I will check the news. So I don't want to be ignorant of what's going on around me. I have maybe a different philosophy than some people who are trying to avoid the news entirely. And I think they're trying to avoid it because they know that there are biased news sources, that they do write things to be sensational and to attract attention. And so they kind of tap into our fear and worry and our stress, and they want that, some of these news outlets. But I don't want to be ignorant of what's happening because I think we need to deal with it. I think we need to inform people about it that are near and dear to us to say, hey, watch out, this is happening. We need to make plans, we need to prepare, and we need to push back and we need to protest in any way that we can, right? Not all of us can march in the streets, but we can protest in our own ways, and I've talked about that. There are companies that I'm boycotting, I'm reducing my spending. I want the corporations to feel some pain. I want their income to drop so that they understand that we're not happy with how they're treating us and we're not happy with how they're aligning with the administration. And it's one way for us to vote with our dollars and our attention, right? So I will check things and be informed. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about ways to improve that, because there is being informed and there's being a victim of propaganda. I think we all know there are some news sources on the left and the right that push pretty hard with the rhetoric and persuasion and propaganda and their own spin on things, and that's not good. It's not good to have such a bias that you don't know what the truth is. So I will talk in a little bit about some sources I think are pretty good. So that was number one. Start with a peaceful, calm morning. Try to avoid the phone. Just enjoy your coffee or tea or chai or whatever it is you do. Journal, sketch, listen to some music. Do something peaceful just to get started. Good way to start your day. And then number two is engaging in healthy self-care. There was an article about self-care recently, and somebody was kind of dumping on it. And they were talking about the self-care that I think is more like self-abuse. But anyway, I think healthy self-care is a really good idea. It's ways to take care of yourself, to bring your stress levels down. That could be things like reading comfort books. There are books that I've read over and over again, even since I was a child, that always make me feel good, that calm me down, that are familiar, make me feel happy. I remember being a happy child, so it's a comfort thing. People do that with comfort shows. So there could be a comfort show that makes you feel better. Going for a walk, doing meditation, whatever it takes to make yourself calm down, treat yourself, and feel good. And I say healthy because I don't think it is engaging with a ton of junk food, right? So it's tempting. Believe me, I understand this. I have a bit of a sweet tooth, but it is very tempting to reach for a bag of chips or some chocolate or, go and treat yourself to some junk food. And it's a very temporary fix, and it has long-term negative effects, right? And I've talked about my journey back to health and losing weight and exercising. And so I don't want to give in to that temptation to just eat junk food. I think binge watching shows falls into that category too. It's not good. It's okay to watch a comfort show or two, but to sit and watch 4 or 5 hours of television when you should be sleeping or doing something more useful, also not good for you. And of course, leaning hard on drugs or alcohol, it just numbs you for a bit and it creates more problems. So, I want you to engage in healthy self-care, and there are a lot of ways you can do that. Not things that are going to damage you or damage your body or have a negative effect on you, and they just don't last. They don't last. Whereas some of this stuff does. Walks and meditation, good stuff. Related to that, number 3, exercise more often. We should be doing this anyway, right? I definitely notice that when my stress levels are high and I'm not feeling good, that if I take a break and go lift weights, I feel better. I lift weights for like an hour. Sometimes on a really, really bad day, I'll lift weights for 2 hours. I kind of lose track of time because I play music that I like. I put on some angry music and I work out. And I like working out. I started doing this in like 2009, lost 40 pounds, got to the best shape of my life. And I do it all the time. I do it every day. If I miss a day, I feel terrible and the stress levels rise. Exercise is good. It's a really good way to deal with the stress and to take care of yourself and to take a break from the news and take a break from social media and scrolling. Put that stuff away, put on some music you enjoy, put in your headphones, and exercise, whatever it is for you. I lift weights. Some people like to do yoga. Some people ride a bike. We went skiing today, which was a great break for us. Going downhill at 30, 40 miles an hour, you can't be scrolling the news and being distracted. You got to be really in the moment, and that is good. That's good for your brain. It's good for your body. Number 4, this is very specifically talking about taking walks, but in making sure that you do this in nature. So I do walks, and sometimes I'll just walk in the neighborhood to take a break between calls, and especially if the weather's nice and I need it. That's good for me, and it helps clear my head. But there has been tons of research around the benefits of green exercise. I shared a link to that. So if you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me and look for the article Finding Balance While Fighting the Good Fight. I have a link to the article I wrote about green exercise and a bunch of other stuff too. But being among trees in the forest or near water has a huge benefit. Really good for you. Really good for you. They've done a lot of research about this, that it helps your cognition and your memory. It reduces pain. There's all kinds of stuff. So if there's a park where you live, or if you live near a forest, we live pretty close to a national forest, so we try to get into that at least once a week. Made this a big part of our life over the last couple of years, where I take an entire day and I spend it with my wife. I take a break from work and we go hiking, and we do some pretty long hikes. We'll do like 10, 12-mile hikes. We'll be up in the mountains, so it'll take us 6 or 7 hours, So it's a long, intense hike, but we love it. Or we'll go skiing or whatever. Sometimes we can just barely get a walk in, but we'll try to go down to a trail where there's some trees and have a view of the sunset or whatever it is. But it's a really great way to recharge your battery and to feel better. So that's number 4. Number 5, there's a lot of research on this too. Listen to music that you love. There is so much research on how good music is for our brain, and it makes us feel young, can feel happy. You have probably used music this way. I definitely use music this way, as I have playlists based on the kind of emotion that I want to feel. So I have a playlist that's kind of high energy, and I use a lot of that for working out, obviously. Kind of get me pumped up and get my heart rate up and feel invincible, me and my invincible stuff. I also have music I listen to when I want to feel relaxed and I want to feel calm, or I have music that makes me feel happy. I have music that helps me focus. I use music when I'm writing, and I have different playlists for this. So I intentionally choose music that evokes an emotion, and I use it to self-soothe. And so listening to music you love can really help you feel better. So you may need a stress reduction playlist to get through the next 4 years, but use it. Use it as a tool to take care of yourself. Number 6, taking intentional breaks from the news. Easy with our phones to be scrolling social media, reading the news. We could do it all day long. You could have audio stuff on. You could listen to a podcast with the news or the radio, and you could have headphones in, and you could be listening to the news all day long. And that's so stressful. It's so overwhelming. And you have a life. You have a job, most likely. You have a family. You have friends. And so there are things you should be doing other than just doom scrolling or listening to the news constantly or reading the news constantly and pulling to refresh over and over again. So schedule it. This is a useful tip. You could figure out either you want to check in on the news a couple of times a day or whatever, or you could set a timer. And I do this sometimes. It's kind of like the Pomodoro method, where I'll set a timer and say, okay, I'm going to read the news for 20 minutes. And when that timer goes off, I stop. I close the news app. I get back to work, or I go work out, or whatever I need to do, just to control it a bit, because sometimes this news is kind of toxic. What's happening spikes a response, right? Your adrenaline goes up, your cortisol levels rise. You get very nervous and scared. It's not good. So setting a time limit can really help with managing so you don't overdose on the news. It sounds funny that we'd have to say that, but the news and what's going on has changed a lot in our lifetime. It's much faster. It comes in, it's fresher. And right now it's really overwhelming. So it's good to take those breaks. Number 7, spending more time with friends and family. We need our community. We need our close friends. We need our family. Whoever it is that makes you happy, makes you laugh, and you can help each other. Maybe you could talk about it if you have friends and family that want to discuss current events. Not everyone does. So you have to respect that. I'm trying to get better at that. I need to work on this. I have a real problem disconnecting. Yeah. I have a real problem finding something to talk about other than the latest events of the day. And not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to sit and marinate in the stress of the news cycle. So you have to find ways to connect with friends and family where they want to connect, right? You can't constantly be harassing your friends and family to be activist or to be as angry as you are about the latest event that happened. And I'm very guilty of this, so I have to fix this. This is something I need to work on. But calling, texting, physically seeing people, spending more time with these people is good for you. It's really good for you. Number 8 is about creating beauty in your life. And I know it sounds kind of touchy-feely, right? I swear I'm not a hippie. I didn't grow up in California. But there's a lot of ugliness in the world right now. But there's a lot of beauty too. So you can intentionally become more of a creator and less of a consumer. I talk about this all the time. I talk about this for my Invincible Life newsletter and podcast. I talk about it with my career folks, with my solopreneur folks who are literally creating a business. But we should strive to create more often. We have become a culture of consumers, We read books that other people write. We watch TV shows that other people produce. We listen to music that someone else made. How often are you creating those things? And it helps. The act of creation is very powerful. And it's very fulfilling. And there is something magical about it. I used to play music a lot. I need to get back into it. I have guitars that are gathering dust. But I started playing music at a very young age and writing music, and I loved it. It really filled my soul up, and I miss it. Creating music made me feel amazing. I would lose track of time. I create art too. I've done some painting. I do a lot of sketching, and creating art makes me feel good. It can be very fulfilling and very relaxing. Sometimes just doodling and just sketching stuff just calms the mind. We are human beings with physical bodies, so physically creating stuff like sketching, making pottery, painting, whatever it is, it can be a very calming thing for you to do because your body's engaged and it helps your mind calm down too. And that it can be a whole lot of stuff. Gardening might be your thing. Knitting might be your thing. Writing poetry. I write fiction. Whatever it is, find some way to create something that you consider beautiful and bring it to life. Don't just let the ugliness of the world overrule everything that you're dealing with so you feel like the world is an ugly place. Look for beauty, create beauty. Really important. Number 9, and this is where a bunch of links come in. So again, go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, finding balance while fighting the good fight. My wife helped me locate some of these sources. I've known some of these sources for years and used some. It's important to research things and learn from more credible and objective sources. I know this isn't a do your own research kind of thing. it's too easy to be spoon-fed stuff from the news and from sources that are trying to manipulate you. They're trying to make you think a certain way. There's a whole bunch of propaganda being floated around, and we've talked about the impact of Russian propaganda that's affected people on Facebook. I mean, it's a very real problem. And it is so hard, folks. It is so hard to find unbiased media to get to the truth. It's so stressful. I mean, just recently we were like, is it a good thing if we allow the government shutdown or a bad thing if the government shuts down? And people on both sides were making the case and sounding credible. Oh my gosh, we really should shut down, let it shut down. That's going to show them. Oh my gosh, if we shut down, it's going to let them take control. We can't shut down. All right, so it's like, what are we going to do? It's so hard to get the truth. And so I've shared some resources. Unfortunately, a lot of U.S. media and news and TV does not make the list because, for example, the Washington Post is owned by a billionaire. Jeff Bezos owns it, and he has literally come out and told his people, this was published a week or two ago. He's like, if you're going to write an opinion piece, I have to approve it. It has to be aligned with my opinion. And if it doesn't, it's not going to get published. So how are you going to get the truth from a news outlet like that? You're just not. So yeah, there's a lot of biased news outlets. We know this. One that is pretty good is called Ground News, and I linked that. It's a platform that makes it really easy to compare different news sources, so it includes all the sources, but it shows you the bias. They have a bias rating system. And I link that too, so you can see how they do that. How truthful is this information? How reliable is this information? How biased is it? Is it left-leaning? Is it right-leaning? Is it centrist? What is it? So it helps you read between the lines of media bias, and you can compare the different points of view and break free of, they say break free from the algorithms that are trying to influence you. So Ground News is a very interesting resource because you can literally see the bias. That has a little color thermometer. It shows you that. Another great source that I've been using for, over a year is 1440 News, 1440. So that's another daily newsletter that aims to provide unbiased news summaries in a very concise format. I like 1440 a lot. And so I subscribe and get it in my inbox. And they cover all kinds of news, but they try to make sure that they're trying to be unbiased. And there's been somebody who assessed this and said, yeah, they are really trying to be unbiased. So it's pretty useful. Again, if you look for unbiased news outlets, if you do a search and say, help me find unbiased news outlets, guess who's going to show up a lot? The Associated Press. And I know they're on someone's naughty list for all the wrong reasons, but the Associated Press really does try to provide unbiased news and very factual reporting. And they've been around a long time. Reuters is another one that tries to be unbiased in its news reporting. Pretty decent. I like to check out the BBC. It's kind of nice to use a news outlet and a source that is not based in the United States. I have concerns about how long U.S. media outlets will remain unbiased if they're getting pressure from the government and from billionaires. We're already seeing some of that. So the BBC is not here. It's not controlled by the U.S. So it's kind of nice to lean on that for some unbiased stories. One that my wife found, which is kind of cool, it's called Tangle, Tangle. Their description, they are an award-winning media organization that covers the biggest political stories in the U.S. by summarizing arguments from the right, from the left, and the center, and then they summarize at the very end and create their own take. Like, what is the big takeaway? That's interesting. So you can see what are the news outlets on the right saying about this event, what are the ones on the left saying, the center, and then what is their takeaway. And that way you're not in an echo chamber, right? And you're not sitting there only getting left-leaning, very liberal news or right-leaning, very conservative news. You're seeing what people are saying on both sides, and then the big takeaway, and then you can decide. And that's kind of my last point. I think it's really important for you to have your own objective data. So we can be told a lot of things. Politicians like to tell us what we should be thinking or what's happening, and we're like, you're kind of blowing smoke here. Just because you say it over and over again and you say it louder doesn't make it true. But that is a very old strategy of if you repeat something often enough, it starts to sound like the truth. So I think it's really good to get real evidence in your personal life, like what is happening with local prices in your life. What are grocery prices looking like? Are prices going up? Are they going down? Price of gas? What's happening? So are we experiencing inflation or not? Are the tariffs impacting the cost of goods where you live or not? So pay attention. Somebody's going to be telling you one way or the other, but you can look at it and say, I know exactly what's happening in my life, so I don't believe you. Take a look at your investments. I just did this. Oh my goodness. Talk about a sad moment. I have lost so much money this year. So much for retiring, huh? If you have a 401k or your company invests for you, or you have something in a retirement account, or who knows, I don't know what you have. But take a look at your investments and pay attention. What has happened to those? What's happened over the last year? What's happened over the last few months? In my case, I've lost a ton of money. If I had to retire soon, I'd be in deep trouble. Luckily, I already kind of knew I'm going to have to work until I die, so oh well. We'll see if it comes back up. But check your investments. Take a look at how policy changes are affecting your life experience. So there are changes happening with policy right now. There are all kinds of interesting things happening that are somewhat unconstitutional. I won't get into it, but what's happening in your life? How is it affecting you personally? And I know that's not all that matters, right? It really shouldn't be all that matters. I know people can get pretty self-centered sometimes, and I get it. We have our lives and we need to take care of ourselves. But you should care about other people too. Just because it isn't taking away your right to vote doesn't mean that it's wrong to take away someone else's right to vote. It's like, come on, seriously? We're deporting someone with no cause? I mean, there's all kinds of scary things happening. It's happening to them today. It could happen to someone you care about tomorrow. It could happen to you. That's how this works. So you should care. So pay attention to those policy changes and how they affect you and people you care about. And there can be things like what's happening to your close friends, what's happening to your family. Are they losing their jobs? So when someone says, these federal workers are lazy, they don't even show up for work, I don't think any of them even work. I know federal workers. I have friends who are federal workers. I have very close family who are federal workers. That's an absolute lie. So even though a politician is trying to lie to my face and tell me that these federal workers are lazy and not doing their jobs, it's a frickin' lie. I know how hard my friends work. I know how hard my family works. I've literally seen it. We talk every day. They are busting their butts. So don't tell me that they're not showing up for work. That is a lie. So that's why I say get this objective data. Get this objective data. And then you will know a source of truth that you literally see, hear, and experience, and don't have to worry about somebody trying to use propaganda against you. And then finally, I talked about this recently. It's like create plans. Create plans to help calm that panicked mind, right? Because when you're hearing all this negative stuff and there's all kinds of stressful things happening, you're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Even if you're not thinking that, your brain is. You are going into a constant fight or flight mode when you get stressed by this barrage of negative news and the daily events. And we still have a very primitive body and brain. It's a whole neurochemical soup, It can't distinguish between that reaction and literally being chased by a predator. So it just knows you are freaking out. You're feeling stressed. You're feeling scared. It dumps adrenaline into your body. It's like, are we being chased by a bear? Do we need to run? And so it dumps all this adrenaline and you have cortisol in your system. Not good. And so making plans can help calm your mind as you're looking at what's happening. And I talked about this and trying to figure out, when do you want to get worried and make plans to do something about it? How do you protect your money, for example? Right? If your investments are dropping through the floor and you're like, oh no, what am I going to do to set aside some money so I don't starve when I get older and retire? So making a plan for that helps. Making plans about what's going to happen if, yes, I won't even go into it. Maybe I just shouldn't go into it. I sometimes get on a roll. The whole idea is just make some plans. Make some plans to say, what am I going to do if X happens? What am I going to do if Y happens? How can I take action today to feel a little bit better? How can I get involved? Do I want to protest? Do I want to boycott a company? Do I want to help my family? Do I want to help a friend? Taking action is very empowering. And so you got to take care of yourself. You got to make these plans. And you will feel better when you know what you're going to do versus just living with some generalized feeling of fear and stress. So I hope that was helpful. 10 ways to pace yourself. Bunch of links in there. So go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me if you want to check those out. Find some unbiased news sources, all that good stuff. And we will get through this. We will get through this. I understand that it's stressful and it's worrying because I'm feeling it too. But I'm taking steps and I am taking action with all this stuff to help myself get more balanced, and I hope you will too. Take care. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with pursuing the life of your dreams so you can be happier, healthier, and more fulfilled.